Executive Director, Mark.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to pull up a presentation, but I'll go ahead and start us off because I'm not going to talk. First of all, good to see you all. Thank you so much for making the time to have me come out today. When I had originally planned to come out and talk about some of the work that we had coming up and a little bit of the work that we had going on that is going to be pertinent to Yelm. But in a recent meeting, when Mayor DePinto saw a presentation that Associate Planner Aiden Dixon, who you'll meet in a second, did around some of our work on detour routes, he asked that we focus on that for this presentation, because this has been something, if we could go ahead, once you get it up, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This has been this work. So what we're going to talk about today is some work that we're doing around emergency detour routes. And this is a huge issue for Yelm, as you all know. And the train derailment was a big kind of wake-up call, I think, for the rest of the region and the state as to kind of how fragile the transportation system is around this area, because we're constrained by Joint Base Lewis McChord, we're constrained by Puget Sound, the Nisqually River. There are limited alternative routes to I-5. 507 is the big one. And so before my time, I've been in this position for about 7 years. Before my time, Yelm, the county and the region had been working on congestion issues around this area and 507. And it continues to be an area of emphasis. And Yelm has a big piece in the work that we are doing right now around detour routes. So this effort started when we had the train derailment, and we then saw a lot of issues around communication, understanding of detour routes. TRPC, along with all the jurisdictions, Washington State Patrol, DOT, came together and worked on detour routes for our county. There are over 50 detour routes in our county. And this piece of work is taking a look at some of those key routes, and are there things that we can do to improve the function of those routes when they're serving as a detour, but also the kinds of things we're talking about would help on everyday sort of function as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Aiden now. Sorry, Aiden, I don't know which one's the right one. I'm going to try that one. Nope, that's what
Is that even?
I'll advance.
Oh, you're advancing.
I'll advance
This is just for the pointer.
That's for the pointer, yes.
Well, I was doing so well.
You can advance. There's like some little extra ones. Yeah. You keep going.
Oh, sorry.
There are no worries. You can go one more. There we go. So yes, as Mark said, first of all, it's wonderful to see you all. Wonderful to meet you. I don't get down here nearly as much as I should. Every time I come down here, it's like 4 in the morning, because I'm usually going to Rainier to climb or run or something like that. So thankfully traffic wasn't an issue, because it certainly is not an issue at 4 in the morning. So yeah, as Mark said, 2017, we all are very well aware, probably the most well aware in the entire region, that the Amtrak derailment caused a lot of chaos on our regional transportation system. Probably the biggest event, definitely the one that started this process, but there are some more recent ones. This was in 2023, I believe. This is more up by, oh goodness, it was in Lacey somewhere. It was a wrong way driver. You can advance. There's some little news blurbs that they've got. That's it. A wrong way vehicle hit a semi, closed down the I-5 near like 108, 109 for a good 8 hours while they were cleaning it up. This is in March 2023, and you can keep going. There's even another, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. That's just to say that even though 2017 was the big kind of primary mover, these things happen with unfortunate regularity. You can pretty much count on one happening every couple of months on average, right? And we hadn't had one happen in a while, but this is all just to say that even though 2017 was the big one, that this happens. It's not really an if, it's more like a when. How severe is it? Well, can't really tell, but it happens a lot. So this project is quite relevant. So if we can advance the next slide here. So This is the detour route network. So when major highways shut down due to collisions or flooding or other blocking emergencies, traffic's detoured to local streets to bypass the incident. And the temporary detours have a pretty significant disruption effect on our local transportation networks. They result in major delays to local traffic and also people passing through the region as well. If they're coming up from Seattle, going down to Portland or going into South County, more kind of regional flows. So pretty significantly disruptive. To better manage these impacts, we at TRPC work together, like Mark said, with a variety of stakeholders after the Amtrak derailment to identify what you're looking at right now. This is 437 miles of managed arterials, collectors, and intersections in Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, Yelm, Nino, Grand Mound, and in unincorporated Thurston County as well. So it's pretty significant. More recently, this is the project in 2022, we got a Federal Highway Administration Surface Transportation Block Grant from WashDOT, basically provided the funding by which we can engage with this project more significantly. So the project itself, we're looking at kind of things from a pretty holistic lens. We're looking at ways to improve the operational efficiency of the detour routes. So thinking about roundabouts figure pretty centrally into that conversation. But when I say operational efficiency, I mean traffic flow, essentially. How can we can't solve issues of traffic when it comes to these things, but you can try to mitigate it as well as you can. So how do we, from an operational perspective, mitigate that as well as we can? Also, we're looking at non-operational ways to manage these events, communication issues with Pierce County. We're right on the border of Pierce County right there. If an issue was to, or if an event was to occur, who calls who, who's responsible for what? These things are time sensitive as well. So, it starts at 6:08 that, every minute will count. Backing up traffic, if there are people that are injured or hurt, who is responding to what. So these kinds of processes are very important to formalize and to make sure that everybody from higher level transportation folks to people, law enforcement officials and EMTs on the ground know exactly what they're supposed to do and who they're supposed to be talking to. You can advance the slide. As a part of the project, a pretty central part of the project, we engaged our modeling staff at TRPC. Basically, we had this really fancy computer simulation, essentially a big computer program that allows us to visualize how traffic might respond during your imagination can run wild, basically anything. So for this project, we decided what might traffic look like if we simulated a full closure of both northbound and southbound lanes at 3 different points. So first point up here, that's the one we're going to be talking about with you all today, but just for reference, we also modeled one occurring right at the 101 junction and 5 downtown Olympia. And then in our South County area down here by Maytown, this is like past 93rd, getting down to Grand Mound, Centralia area down here. This is the Lewis County line, basically. But we're gonna be talking about this one. This is the big boy. So that's essentially Mounts Road right here, Center Drive. That's where the Amtrak essentially derailed, and some interesting insights were found when we modeled this closure. You can advance to the next slide. So there's a lot of info on this slide. I'm going to try to talk you through it as best I can. First, I want you to understand that red, so this is essentially traffic compared to baseline. A red will be less traffic than normal. There's a closure that's actually can't see. It's like up here somewhere. It's saying, oh, look, there's usually a lot of traffic on I-5, but there's no traffic right now because there's a total closure occurring right here. So less traffic on I-5. Blue is more traffic than normal. So closure up here, a lot of traffic on 507 or 510 coming down this way into Yelm. So basically, should try to understand is blue is more traffic than normal on the particular roadway, and red is less traffic than normal on a particular roadway. As you can see, mostly blue. That's because all the traffic is being diverted off I-5 both directions, and it's coming out, and people are trying to figure out to get from here to try to go this way all the way around. If we're going northbound, to try to maybe take Rainier Road and up. So the model was basically doing a lot of complex calculations to try to figure out what path travelers would take in the event of a closure. As you can see, very significant levels, not surprisingly, on 510 as people attempt to either go around the base, so Fort Lewis through Roy, or southbound traffic attempting to basically take 510 to 507 and then come all the way down through Grand Mound. I just want to emphasize here that this scenario, and this kind of plays out in 2017, it has regional impacts. I mean, it basically affects the entire surface transportation network in the entire county. Effects are primarily centralized in this area here. No surprise that you will see most of the traffic probably coming down 510 through Yelm and then distributing, either going this way or coming down over here this way. Also Rainier Road as well. A lot of these north-south arterial roads that connect the urbanized area up here down with our South County partners, and municipalities down this way as well. So regional impacts here, the entire county surface transportation network essentially would see effects. Doesn't really matter where you are, but like I said before, primarily concentrated in our area in Yelm right now. That's the slide. Right here, we're looking at intersection impacts. So before we were looking at kind of what the traffic flow on the corridors might be like, but I want to concentrate now on the model is basically saying, you know, red is bad. Yellow is also bad, but red is the worst. So basically for each one of these red dots and yellow dots for that matter, is an intersection. I was gonna try to list out the intersections for you all, but they're so numerous in Yelm. Basically think of any major intersection in this town, it would be absolutely blown up. So basically everything from downtown coming through to, you got spots on the outskirts of town as well on Bald Hill Road coming down this way, and even into Pierce County as you go up across the river. So I can provide details of, there's a current conditions report that's going to be coming out very soon that will, with more detail about each one of these intersections and specific times. But I think the main message I want to communicate to you is that pretty much every major intersection in Yelm, and if anyone was, I assume, around in 2017, there should be no surprise that basically every major intersection in Yelm will be affected by the you know, a closure that's essentially occurring up here as it goes this way. You can pass the slide. Right now, I want to talk about a little bit more about the roundabout situation. So in addition to the modeling work that I just showed you all, we decided it would be interesting to simulate what the construction of a series of roundabouts, which you're all no doubt familiar with. This is just the one at 507 in Vale, but there's also one at Bald Hill, and there's also one planned at the Walmart parking lot, or the Walmart Road. It's 3, and then maybe another one that I'm
702.
702, that's right. So series of roundabouts through Yelm and outside of Yelm that are in various stages of construction and planning. Actually, I think this one, they said it's 60%. There's an open house tomorrow. It's just a cool little factoid. Anyway, on the left, I want you to see there's a lot of data here. I'm just going to try to guide you through it. On the left, you're looking at the situation of a closure without a roundabout. And on the right is the closure with a roundabout. There are some numbers here I'm going to talk about. This number, or these numbers in these boxes right here, is the delay. So it's essentially the model saying, you know, the average car during this closure would wait on average about 310 seconds at this intersection right here before it could start to proceed whatever direction it's going in. The other smaller number are the volumes. So it's basically saying how many vehicles the model's estimating will be moving through this intersection during a closure. As you can see, models saying, you know, over 1,000 vehicles. So this is only for, I think, like an hour, 2-hour period. So thousands and thousands of vehicles, essentially, you can imagine trying to go through. Not great, 310 seconds. It's like multiple minutes of just waiting and waiting and waiting. Essentially, there'd be flaggers here or something like that. The traffic controls would be pretty backed up. The roundabout over here, you're looking at not as many seconds, 310, 14, that's a lot better. These numbers are not, obviously this is a simulation, so these numbers shouldn't really be taken as gospel, but they provide us an insight into what it might be like. So the model is essentially, it's, you know, it's not a perfect depiction of what's going to happen in the future, but it can give us kind of lead us down the road and give us some initial perspectives about what we could expect, generally speaking, if there was a closure with a roundabout. 14 seconds, 12 seconds, there's 131 seconds right here. That's a bit much, but overall, communicating to you all here, time, talking about delay, is much lower with a roundabout. Also, these traffic volumes, as you can see, are pretty similar. If anything, they're actually more here. So what the story is that the report has kind of arrived at is that these roundabouts, not only would they reduce the delay during a closure event, they would also facilitate a pretty decent amount of traffic to be able to go through. So we're talking about lower times, but not lower vehicles, no lower amount of vehicles. So we would be able to facilitate the same or a greater amount of vehicles through with a roundabout with lower delay. So anyone, if you know much about roundabouts, this is to be expected, but that's under normal traffic conditions. This is during a closure where you're basically upping the throughput, or at least the vehicle numbers, very, very high. So how well does a roundabout perform during one of these closure events? Pretty well, the model says. And this is true for all the roundabouts. This is just one I'm going to show you, but we modeled all four and they all perform pretty much the same way. So roundabout's a good idea for an emergency closure. Can facilitate a lot more cars, and also keeps that volume, or keeps that time down. As you can kind of imagine, cars would be able to kind of flow without having to stop for traffic. And these signals are timed so for normal traffic flow and not for an emergency situation. So it kind of gets pretty chaotic, if you can imagine at a traditional signalized intersection on the left. Advance the slide. So that was a lot of the work that we've been doing on this project focused on modeling these closures. We also looked at a couple different things. We looked at truck and freight mobility. The vast majority of vehicles that are moving through our network and during a closure are passenger vehicles. Pretty standard stuff over here, but there are a lot of trucks, a lot of vehicles, trucks that are moving from Seattle down to Portland. There's a lot of distribution centers in Lacey as you come out of JBLM. There's a lot of trucks that come down here to provide services and to drop off everything from groceries to hardware equipment to feed to soil and anything you can imagine that are moving on our road system. And they have special considerations when a closure happens specifically. So truck safety and logistics flow is key. Disruptions, you should minimize them to maintain efficient goods transport, like I said, and overall kind of safety. You can advance the slide. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I can go back. Getting a little ahead of myself here. So within truck and freight mobility, we're talking about truck parking. So like if a closure was to happen and it extended overnight, which has happened before, where do trucks park? Do they pull off the road? Where do they pull off the road? The study identified that there's a lack of truck parking. There will likely never be enough truck parking depending on what time the closure is happening. There are certain rest areas on I-5 southbound, and there's also a rest area at Fort Lewis that would be able to provide an okay amount of parking for these trucks, but depending on when the closure was to occur overnight with minimal traffic flow and not a lot of trucks flowing there, better. But if it was to occur during like PM rush hour or traditional parts where trucks are moving a little bit more depending on their schedules, there would not be enough truck parking to accommodate all of the trucks that would need to pull off to the side, especially if the drivers needed to sleep in their cars or something like that, if it was to go for a longer period of time. So truck parking is an issue. It's something that Washout has talked about pretty extensively as well. It's something that we are keeping our eye on and hopefully trying to find different creative ways to manage essentially freight mobility or trucks in the event of a closure. That's the next slide. At-grade rail crossings is also something that we've been looking at in this project. So if you think about passenger vehicles, think about trucks, and then you think about trains. So the big kind of transportation movers here. The detour routes were designed with this in mind. So there are not really any at-grade crossings that would significantly affect trucks, or not, excuse me, trucks, rail. There are a few. There's one at, I think this is Henderson Boulevard. This is Watershed Park. It's just south of Olympia. This is the only Class 1 rail at-grade crossing on the detour route network. When I say class 1 rail, I just mean like the big players of rail, the Union Pacifics, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe's. I think those are the only two. This is BNSF. It's signalized, there's no gates. Oh no, there's a gate over there. Essentially, this is something to keep in mind if you want to think about a train crossing and there's like a bunch of traffic here because there's a closure. Mitigating, you don't want another accident to happen, and just creates more issues for everybody. It's from a safety perspective, it's very important. So thankfully, the detour routes were designed with this in mind. Most of the time when you are encountering a rail crossing on a detour route, the rail is on a flyover, so it's basically going over and the road is going under. So thankfully, not much to report from a safety perspective with regards to rail crossings on the detour route network. Next slide. Vertical clearances, this is a bit more of an issue. So essentially, when you're talking about trucks, talking about vertical clearances, the detour routes, again, were designed with this in mind. So officially on the detour route network, there are no, specifically no low clearance. So a situation like this should not happen on the detour routes network because they were designed to avoid these. However, the thing that's being brought up in one of the study, our current conditions report, we found that although the detour routes network, the official detour route network, does not have any of these low clearances that would pose an issue to trucks, there are roadways that parallel the detour route network that are not actually on the official network, but would ostensibly, conceivably be used by trucks, perhaps, if they decided to deviate from the route network for whatever reason. I believe. This is in Pierce County. Yes, that is correct. I couldn't actually find a good picture of, there's a couple, but they're not on the detour route network. So this one is the best one that I could find. But there's one on Old Highway 99. And there's also one on 507 in Tenino. That's 14 foot 3 inches. And then the one on Old Highway 99 is very, very short. It's 12 foot 6 inches. So these are not on the official route network. However, this brings up a good point. Like 20 years ago, GPS was not very common. You maybe had those TomToms that people would spend a lot of money on if they were fancy, but otherwise you really wouldn't see GPS in cars. Fast forward to 2025, every phone has the ability to do these things. They will create little shortcuts and try to get you somewhere faster. Oftentimes this is not actually faster, but that's just all to say that the ability to kind of cordon folks onto an official route network is harder these days. People will see, oh, it saves me 1 minute during, maybe they get really panicked during if they're late to work or something and there's a closure and they decide to get off the detour route network, or if a truck decides that it wants to get off anyway. So creates a lot of issues, potentially speaking, if someone was to deviate from the route network. There's only so much that law enforcement can do to guide folks onto the route that they should be taking. So an issue that we're finding with the current conditions report is that there needs to be, or their probably recommendation will come out that, consider expanding the detour route network potentially, or providing kind of like a secondary network for law enforcement and for emergency responders to be able to access the incident site, or to be able to route trucks onto something that would pose less of an issue so they wouldn't get into trouble. I think you can imagine the situation is potentially very critical when one of these things happens, and there can be a cascading effect if somebody was to, if a detour route was to shut down because somebody didn't pay attention or follow the rules. It just becomes more and more resources are very finite and get really strained. So you just trying to want to stop, or at least create the situation where you're trying to manage all the negative effects, and you definitely don't want more negative effects to happen.
Can we pause just for a
Yes, of
second?
course. Mhm.
We had a question online real fast.
Yeah.
Trevor Palmer, was that what you're gonna say?
Oh, not, I also have questions.
Okay. Councilmember Palmer, can you hear us? Is he? Councilman Palmer, can you hear us?
Let me stop sharing.
Let's go to Councilmember Hess and then we'll go back.
Sir,
Yeah.
having been a commercial driver, 13.6 is the minimum that most of the tractor trailers are.
Mhm.
Like the one you saw there, that was probably 13.6 is they're at a height level. What would be really helpful, instead of trying to fight the GPS system, is putting up signs.
Okay.
A lot of truck drivers, in particular, if they don't drive in this area that often, they don't know that those little side roads have those low bridges. So on the convoy route that you want to keep them on, the route itself, if you would either put truck route and keep it that way, or actually put a sign for the off-route one of low bridge.
At those major junctions.
Yeah, because a truck driver who fails to follow said warning signs, that's when law enforcement can do a lot more than, somebody got somewhere where they didn't know. So that's why those signs are very important. So working with WashDOT to get those signs would be helpful. Also, in reference to previous slides where you showed the one of the routes was going from Rainier to Vale cut off that one.
Going around, yeah.
What would be really nice is if you put truck route and have a condition, or if we could get somebody there quick enough to say all trucks go this way, let cars go the other.
Okay.
Okay, because that's one of the other things that a lot of the drivers that I knew, they didn't know about that little cutoff.
Sure.
Very few of them know about that cutoff. They all know 507, let's go right into Yelm and let's try to make that right turn and not hit a car. So just wanted to share that with you.
That's great perspective. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Palmer, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, I was not joined as a panelist. I apologize. No, I just wanted to thank Mr. Daly for coming out and doing this presentation. It's informative, and I love seeing the traffic modeling on the roundabouts. And I'm excited to see more as they build them. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Please continue, Aiden.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
Yeah, how are we doing?
Just a few more minutes if you.
Yeah, sure. We're towards the end here.
Yeah,
We can
good.
advance the slide.
Yeah.
Agenda.
We're good. I don't think it's too much longer anyway.
No.
You guys should be all right.
One of the last things we looked at was weight restrictions. Again, not much to report from this angle of the detour routes network was created with this in mind. There aren't too many weight restriction roads in Thurston County that we're aware of, and the ones that are have been signed, and they're pretty unintuitive to what the detour routes network would, the chances of a truck or something that would exceed the weight limit on one of the roadways is pretty low. That being said, it's definitely something that we're considering, and we have that repository of information to make sure that any of these weight restricted roads would be appropriately signed and inform folks, especially with tractor trailers that may be carrying very large loads or very heavy loads around. Slide. So we had a bunch of partner and stakeholder interviews that we did at the beginning of this project. We're talking about operational efficiencies to this point, and now we're going to start talking a little bit more about non-operational efficiencies or communication issues. Essentially, is what we're talking about here. One of the primary points that was echoed throughout these interviews was the need for better communication, consistently identified, especially with these closures spanning county lines. We're talking right here, the Thurston Pierce County line, very, very close, right over the bridge right there. There could be, and there will be essentially issues with regards to communication. We are not budgeted for a formal communication strategy for this project, but it is definitely something that we would like to recommend for future work. Definitely need to dedicate time and the appropriate amount of effort to creating something of that scope and breadth. So it's definitely a central recommendation for this report. Another is emergency responder access. Again, trying to figure out how, if these detour routes are choked full of people, how can law enforcement and EMTs get to the incident site effectively and fast. So how to position ourselves in such a way that they are able to get to where they need to go without running into a bunch of traffic. And also, that's why we're here, the impacts on Yelm area. And we all knew this coming into the project, at least I did, definitely did. But it's good to see that the project and the data that we're looking at really supports the kind of severity and the immediacy of the issue that we're looking at with regards to the impacts in Yelm. It's one thing to have anecdotal experiences, but it's another to collect all that body of information and data and evidence and interviews and all these kinds of things, so that if you were to go out for funding or to make a case to electeds or other people, that you really have that big weight of information to work with. So
In all those shutdowns or those scenarios that you showed us, every single one impacted Yelm the greatest. Is that fair to say?
Yes, so the one in South County on the other side of the county essentially doesn't have as much impact to Yelm, but to your point, the regionality, I think if I could communicate anything to you guys, it would be the regionality of these. It doesn't necessarily relegate it to, depending on the severity, dependent on a lot of things, but it's not necessarily relegated to one little tiny spot. Yelm's position, I think. The area where the Amtrak derailment happened is probably, I would say, one of our most vulnerable transportation pinch points with regards to the base. There's a lot that is coming through that area, and as you know, Yelm's position on the backside of the base is a critical transportation route for local traffic and for regional traffic too. So this kind of whole corridor, I'm talking specifically about where the Amtrak train derailed, but down through Yelm, down through here as well. It's one of our more vulnerable pieces of transportation infrastructure, and it's particularly susceptible to probably the worst of the congestion issues if and when it happens. You can advance the slide. So all this to say, what are we going to look at next? So current conditions report is essentially complete. It's going through some finishing touches. It should be available for your review pretty soon. One of these things that we're going to look at, I guess there's a couple different things to look at, but you know, we're definitely looking at trying to figure out ways to mitigate impacts from I-5 closures. We're looking at identifying potential additions to the detour route network. We're looking at operational improvements. We're looking at non-operational improvements. Multimodal safety is also an issue. We talked a lot about vehicles today, but it's really important to recognize that folks that are in downtown Yelm or folks that are in the urbanized area of Olympia and Tumwater and Lacey are going to be walking and biking and taking transit, and they're going to be impacted as well. So it's definitely something that we're thinking about how these different transportation modes play with vehicle traffic during the event of a closure. And also clear routes for emergency responder access. I talked about that a little bit, but just trying to figure out how to best direct EMTs and law enforcement to where they need to go. Next slide. So what are our next steps? We are in the process of creating an RFP for a consultant to conduct an operational analysis for the project. RFP should be out in the spring sometime, in the next month or two, I would say. Consultants should get to work in the summer, like fully onboarded and really digging into the data. TRPC is going to be creating a resilience strategy, which is essentially my fancy term for non-operational improvements. So recommending communication strategy be pursued and other types of non-operational improvements that we could do to enhance the effectiveness of our detour routes. And then finally, all that's going to get wrapped up into a implementation and action plan, which should be available sometime next year once the consultant finishes the operational analysis. And once we finish our resiliency strategy, we'll put it all together in a nice package and probably come back down here and talk about more about what the consultant found in terms of recommendations, and then what we found as well. I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, I just wanted to give one kudos to the mayor, because when the mayor heard this presentation at our council, the comment was, "Can we do this quicker?" And so the original timeline, we just because of trying to fit in work, we were planning to do the RFP later in the year. You may have heard, Mayor, that that is a different answer now. We're working on it now. So and that was directly due to your input. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, let's start with Councilmember Hess.
So just to also, when you were talking about the better communication, I don't know if you have somebody in your staff who could possibly do it. Reference to it is if you reach out to Rand McNally, is the major map maker that works with Garmin for truck specific GPSs, and then each one of the major trucking companies. I don't know why they do it, but they like to have proprietary. If you find contacts with those, they can actually get it into their GPS of this is you don't go down this road.
Okay.
And they can actually, that could be proactive prior to even putting up signs, or even before you even start putting this project together, gets the trucks at least in the right direction.
Got it. That's a great.
So just to let you know about that.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Speaking of detour routes, I don't know if it's you, but have you any idea how they're gonna handle traffic during the replacement of the I-5 bridge over the river?
That is a great question. I would defer to.
I do. I do.
That's a great question.
What the plan is they'll actually build, and they did the same thing around Tacoma, which is they will build a new bridge first, either the north or southbound, and it'll be in a little bit of a different place than it is now. So they'll complete one whole direction of a new bridge. Then they'll shut down one of the old bridges so that we've still got two roadways, north and south, and then they'll do the same thing. They'll start on the next bridge and then decommission the original. So
Be more traffic going each way on the same bridge.
there will be the same traffic going on at the new bridge at one point. Once the new bridge is built, then the traffic will go there, either north or southbound. So in other words, you won't lose any road capacity on I-5 during construction. That's not saying there won't be impacts, because, you know, as you drove through Tacoma when they were doing that, there were impacts, but not as big as they would, because they're not kind of doing it lane by lane. Whoops, they're doing the whole thing, then shutting one down, doing the next one, shutting the other one down.
Or like shutting the whole bridge down and then building it and then opening up
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Good question.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Crossman.
When you guys have these traffic incidents, is there partnerships with the tech companies like Google and Apple to keep people going down these detour routes? I mean, they have, you know, massive data that's instant, real time. I mean, is there those type of partnerships involved so that, hey, Google, we have an incident, we need people to stay on these routes, so they, you know, their programmers can keep people from straying off to.
You mean like during an event to
Yes.
be able to communicate with them? And so if someone's using their GPS, it wouldn't necessarily direct them to a place that they wouldn't want them to go.
Right.
We don't have anything formalized, but that's a good question. That's something that I heard actually previously, I think at Transportation Policy Board. It's definitely something that we'll be looking at to try to make inroads, or at least reach out to Google and these types of, like, you know, Garmin essentially, to communicate those issues to them. I'm sure that's not the first time they've heard about this, but it's definitely something that we're going to be looking into.
I mean, there's like road construction or something, they'll, you know, Google has that and they'll reroute you because of construction and stuff. So, I mean, I'm curious, if that's a high issue. And then, second question, I know probably won't happen, but rebuilding the bridge across the Nisqually, I mean, are those things looked at as well? You know, 'cause there's other bridges that have been across Nisqually that have been down forever, but have any of those options been looked at, like, hey, we need maybe rebuild one of these for emergency situations, or, you know, as a part-time use? Any of those avenues ever looked
Secondary
at?
bridges.
A new
that
bridge,
people do.
a new bridge over the.
Essentially.
Or rebuild an existing bridge that was there, because there was another bridge like over in Bald Hills that went across Nisqually, if you've been around a long time. You know, there were more bridges that crossed in Nisqually that aren't there no more. You know, of any of those avenues looked at to help alleviate some of this, you know, not mainly, you know, maybe not being used as a primary route, but as a emergency.
Sure, like an
Only, like, hey, we have an event, let's open this bridge up, this road. Or any of those things looked at?
Bridge construction is a pretty big capital project, so it's about the money, you all know,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I would just say.
When you have billions sitting on the road that's not moving, that's a pretty good motivator.
Yeah, your question, has that been considered? No, not to my knowledge. And I think it will be a tough one, because there is such a backlog of existing bridges that need replacement, that it's gonna be challenging to make a case for another new bridge across a waterway. And I think there's a good chance that would be challenging to negotiate with the Nisqually Indian tribe as well, I think.
Hundreds of millions for a new bridge minimum, but yeah. Councilmember Kaminsky.
I did see a rendering the other day in a meeting of what they want to do with the bridge, and it's up 85 feet off the river. And the idea is to get any roads away from the water, because it's just destroying the bridges.
That's right.
And the
Councilor,
fishing rights and all that stuff.
Councilor Hess.
When I was on the committee before Councilmember Woods replaced me, I was part of that I-5 briefing going on, and I brought up something in reference to that, and I've tried to follow up. I just don't have the person's point of contact. But what I brought up was the big thing between Lacey to JBLM is the way station and that road going uphill, all the trucks. They know they're not supposed to go to the third lane, so they start taking up the 2 lanes, but they all know they have to go over to the 1. And it was making some kind of bypass for them like they did further down with JBLM of, hey, this is for everybody's going to get off at this spot. I was wondering if you guys, when you are communicating with WashDOT, if you can just kind of bring that up again to look at that, because that is, as I say, that's the one thing that kills everybody right there on that hill. It's not the sun glare or anything. It's all of a sudden all the trucks that want to go up the hill.
Yeah.
So,
And we have talked with WashDOT about that. It's my understanding that that is one of the issues they will be looking at in the environmental review that's going on right now.
as I said, just that one single lane that all of a sudden all the trucks, they all know that whether they got to go to the way station or not, they're going that way. So.
Any other questions, council, regarding transportation projects or anything that they can help out with? Any modeling?
Yeah, Councilman Ball here.
Go ahead.
On the bridge note, so when my dad was the foreman of Vale Tree Farm, they used to put in massive bridges that could handle log truck traffic and all sorts of heavy machinery, and they cost about $100,000. You adjust that for inflation, that's about $230,000. So when I see that price tag of $250 million for a new bridge over the Nisqually, how much of that is just government BS, excuse my language, but because it just seems crazy that having those kind of figures, that much of a difference, why does it cost so much to build a bridge now when we used to be able to build them for pretty affordably and strong?
I think the expressway bridges would see a lot more traffic than those logging bridges would ever see. Also, I think this is a great question. A lot of transportation infrastructure, we can balk sometimes at the cost, but there are a lot of background expenditures that need to go in to make sure that it's built to a certain standard to accommodate all the traffic and making sure that the engineers are all signing off on these things and the land acquisition and all these types of right of way, and the structural integrity is sound. So and pay for everybody's time and all these things like that. So it does sound like a lot of money, but infrastructure ain't cheap,
But I will also say the less politically correct answer is, yeah, it is a lot of money. And when you look at these things, private development tends to be cheaper than local government development, which tends to be cheaper than state development, which tends to be cheaper than federal development. As we go up these levels of government, requirements like Buy America adds cost, disadvantaged business enterprise that you have to demonstrate how you've gone out and looked at who your vendors are. There are a lot of pieces added that do add costs, and unfortunately, I'll say, council member, that the estimate for the bridge is between 1 and now 5 billion across the Nisqually River. Part of that is, the biggest part is the span that council member Kaminsky, I cannot.
I was barely hanging on that way.
Talked about, but so I will just say you are absolutely right. There is a lot of administration and various environmental review and all that definitely adds to the cost. And when it's a federal project, there are the most requirements of any transportation project.
Some of them might be jobs.
That's just wild to me. Yeah, because another stat I saw back in the 70s, it used to be 3 cents of every tax, or 30% of every tax dollar went to administrative costs and 70% went to road construction. And now our model is inversed, where it's 70% goes to administrative costs and 30% goes to actual road construction. So I think we got a problem that needs to be addressed at the state level. But I'm sorry, I'm just throwing thoughts out there because it's just wild to me how expensive this stuff gets and how little our tax dollars actually go towards actual road construction.
I hear you, Councilmember.
Any other questions, comments from council?
I know I'm not on the council, but from a peasant point of view, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
I was in Europe and you had traffic rules 7-8 layers, and now you see them going up everywhere. And yet, is there any push for the education of the driver's eds to learn how to use those things?
Yeah.
Especially for the older folks too.
Yeah.
It's a merge in, blink out. It just seems to be a concept. So you throw all these traffic circles, but they don't know how to use them.
Yeah.
And I noticed the trucks need to have that lower ramp because they can't cut that turn. Are they designed that way too? The ones you're.
Why don't you address the education piece?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is something that comes up in the legislature almost every session.
Sure.
Because you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, people don't know how to use them well enough. And one of the big things that they've targeted, and there is good data to back this up, is when the state privatized driver's ed,
We lost a lot.
there was a diminishment in the quality of that driver's education. And so that is one of the things that's getting a lot of discussion is potentially looking to kind of reinvigorate that school model for driver's ed so that that doesn't deal with the drivers who were
Much older, yeah.
and encountering some things that they hadn't before, but that will definitely help with the new drivers if we can improve on that driver's education.
Any other questions, comments?
I would love if people blinked in and blinked out more often because it really helps. Not enough people do that.
Ian, Mark, thank you very much for this presentation.
Yeah,
Very
thank you all
informative.
for your time. Have a great night.
All righty, moving on to public comment. Rich, thank you for waiting patiently. Please state your name for the record, and if you have things to hand out, you can just
So my name is Rich Wright.
pass one and hand it down and then stand up at the podium, please.
Yep, I will. So my name is Rich Bright. I'm a Civil War reenactor, and I've been doing it about, a couple years after I got out of Fort Lewis in '93. I'm also a cavalry guy. I'm not a cowboy. I don't ride horses to push cows. I ride horses to push infantry out of the way. You can see by your pictures there, we've been doing the Yelm event now for 2 years. And, but it was kind of in the crawl space, and I've done bigger events in Yakima. So they asked me this year to take this on. We're not looking at just this year. We want to continue to do this for the next couple of years. We usually find that we get stale after a couple of years, so we move the sites around. But I always tell parents that Civil War reenactors end up becoming experts in their different fields. Like I'm a horse guy, a sword, a pistol, those kind of things. Artillery guys become experts in their field, infantry become experts theirs. And you expose your children to this hands-on thing, and they have fun, but they learn something. And the schools, like we were talking about, they're not always, in tune with things. They're not teaching this history in school anymore as much as they used to. It's now, instead of US history, it's world history and how we fit into that as a country. And so the Civil War reenactors are very in tune with trying to not glorify war, but try to educate it. So we're doing the event in, and I'm from Yakima, by the way, just outside of Yakima. And I came this way because I know I'm going to need to talk to some of you folks about some of the issues as we get closer to the event in Labor Day. So I thought it was good to come and get a face-to-face and get my contact information out there. We're going to try to do a homeschool event on that Friday. So this is going to be 30, what I got on my list, 30, 31, and 1 September. Also, I know this is way off subject. I noticed you guys had some banners out there with red, white, and blue flags. Are those people that have been killed in the region?
Not necessarily, just have to be service members for
Okay.
veterans or active duty.
Well, I wonder if we could borrow those and put those up along the fence. We like to honor the military. A lot of us are military. You would think that military people wouldn't want to be in the military stuff after, but it's very therapeutic for the people with PTSD. So if there's a way to display those, we love that. We'll probably get Fort Lewis come out and let them do a flag ceremony too. So I want to work with the area. One of the things I'm really concerned about is the banners. I know you have a banner sometimes before an event, you put it across there. I think it's Cody that I'll work, not have to work with, but will work with. So I just want to make sure we're stepping on the right toes and we're not stepping on the wrong toes. The other thing is we want to put up some billboards or something. So I want to make sure I find out what the rules are and who that would be to coordinate with. So we're gonna also, this event is gonna be co-done with the Washington Civil War Association, which is mostly Washingtonians out of Spokane, all the way up to Bellingham, all the way down to Vancouver. The Oregonian Northwest Civil War Council, they have also made this their event. So they're gonna the event with us. So we're looking at probably 200 to 350 reenactors, not from Yelm. And I don't know, do you have an LTAC?
We do. The time is up, but final thoughts, please, sir?
Yeah, well, just if you have any questions, but I do want to make sure I coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce and LTAC and other things. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, lodging tax applications are available on our website now and they're due by March 1st.
I better get on it then. Okay. All right.
Any questions, comments from council? Councilor Kaminsky?
Looking at the gunfire, that wouldn't hurt people with PTSD? Like
It's surprisingly, it's like I have registered PTs. I've been to combat 3 different tours. And it's just being a part of the military and a part of that, it doesn't bother me. It's just strange. You would think it would.
You feel like you're at home.
Well, if you don't know where the shot comes from with PTSD, then that bugs you. But if you know where it's coming from, it's interesting. I would always think they would be, but there's a ton of us that are in the military or were in.
Interesting. Sounds really cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right. Thank
any
you, sir.
questions or anything? Okay, all right. Well, appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We have the February 4th, 2025 study session minutes, as well as the February 11th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilor Kaminsky.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilor Hess.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Say. Sorry, thank you, Councilmember Palmer. Any nay? Motion carries. All right, moving on to new business. Appointment for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. This is a motion to approve myself to appoint Amar Dariwal to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. He is the new general manager. I'm sorry, my apologies. She is the new general manager for the Prairie Hotel, which is one of the qualifiers for this LTAC committee. It's been very difficult to get another member of this due to the fact that we have to have someone from a hotel that participates in this voluntary tax. So that being said, is there any discussion or comments? Councilman Richardson.
Yeah, so we originally just you already appointed Franklin, right?
Correct.
And he was part of and they have to be somebody that's tied to the hotel in some shape, way, or
At least one of the
at
members.
least one of them. Okay, so this would fall underneath the qualifications of as being a general manager.
Correct.
They would have more than just one representative, I would say, to be on that committee.
Correct. Yeah, they have 2, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, 2 for the hotel, 1 for events like 2 for events like a barbecue rally, let's say, which is actually what we do. Shelley Nicholson on there. As well as elected official and for myself. And then is there any other one I'm missing? I think I hit them all.
Steve.
As the event though.
The
isn't it?
event, yes.
Yeah.
The events you have to have by RCW, you have to have 2, you have to have 5, 2 from the hotel, just like he said, 2 from events, and then 1 elected official. And you have to have even numbers. You have to have the number coming from the hotel, that collects the tax, and the events has to be even.
So we're just meeting the qualifications of the RCWs with this.
Correct.
Understand?
Yep. This literally, there's not many people that can fit this role. Is there a motion to approve Amar? Councilor Hess.
Move to approve Mayor DePanto's appointment of Amar Dariwal to the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I apologize for messing up her name.
Second.
Second by Councilor King. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, council. None old business, there's none scheduled. Moving on to standing council committee reports, starting with public safety committee.
Nothing new to report this time.
Moving on to public services committee.
We met today. We talked about Longmire Park and that's new plans are going forward within a few years. We look at that further. Interesting that people are curious about the parking lot across the street from Longmire Park will be completed hopefully by summertime for all the sports, and that is built by the landowner. So that's pretty nice of him to do that for us. And I'm sure that'll be busy because my kids use that park too. We go there for sports, so yeah. Tomorrow at Prairie Elementary from 5:30 to 6:30 is a open house to talk about the roundabouts. So if anybody wants to voice their opinion or learn or anything about the roundabouts, go to Prairie Elementary tomorrow at 5:30.
If I might, just real quick, it is with the, this is primarily for the Thurston County roundabout at Bald Hills, correct?
Vale.
In Vale, excuse me, Vale.
Yeah.
But the city is piggybacking on ours, at Five Corners. So we'll be there. McKenna will not be there. Is that correct?
Yeah, Pierce County will not be there, just us in Thurston County, correct?
It's a roundabouts in you.
Yep.
And then I also brought up to the planning department of the flooding issues here by Timberland Bank, the trailhead that lake forms every time it rains decently. And the fingers go like this. So that was very frustrating for me, and I extended that frustration. And that is all the important stuff we talked about.
Thank you. Go off that just a little more. Cody, has there been any more developments with WASDOT regarding that, the maintenance and fixing it?
Negative. The last email chain was pretty much our deferral to them as it's not a maintenance issue, it is a construction issue. There needs to be an improvement constructed on the state highway.
And we haven't heard anything back
And
from
we
them.
haven't heard anything since that ball was in their court.
Can we follow up with them again? Thank you.
Just,
Yeah, Councilor Richardson.
so for clarification, they're telling the city that it's a maintenance issue on our part, and we're trying to refer to them as, no, this is like a pre-existing condition that needs more attention, but more than just maintenance.
Why do we believe it's not a maintenance?
We've cleaned, so there's one drain specifically that's responsible for this. We've cleaned out the drain and the flooding's still happening. The drain's undersized. So you can clean the drain 1,000,000 times. You can't. You gotta build a bigger garbage stream. So that's where we're at now. We're at too much to go in a small spot. So it needs to be bigger, needs to be upsized and redesigned.
What a vivid analogy. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Councilmember Crossman, for that report. Moving on to Finance Committee.
No meeting.
All right, moving on to Mayor, City Administrator, staff reports. Todd.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. I have a few updates.
I'm sorry. I skipped over general government because it's not on the agenda for some reason. General Government Committee, Stephanie, my apologies.
Yes, we met today, sorry, the hour just before now. And we actually made quite a bit of headway on our mayor and council protocols manual, so that was wonderful. And so we are still making updates, and that.
We're in the end. Yes, thank you for your work on that. All right, moving on now to Mayor, City Administrator, staff reports. Todd.
You guys ready?
Ready.
Okay. I got a few, so just bear with me here. The first one is just today, the city of Yelm received notification that we have achieved the 2025 Well City distinction from AWC. Yelm is one of 123 trust members to receive this designation throughout the state. Each Well City recipient receives a 2% premium discount on their AWC employee benefit medical premiums in 2026. For Yelm, this is estimated to be a value of about $25,000 in savings in 2026. Aside from the 2% savings on premiums, the rewards of a healthy workplace can be felt across the organization and have positive impact on the community as well. Well cities are a great place to work with quality, sustainable benefits and a workplace that supports employee well-being. A healthy workplace culture leads to happy, healthy, and productive employees that are fully engaged in serving their communities. Reduce costs with decreased sick days, disability, healthcare, claim costs, and workers' comp claims is a win for everyone. Leading the charge to make sure the city of Yelm achieves this designation is our highly respected HR department, consisting of Karen Bennett and Shelby Denny. And of course, this designation wouldn't be reached without the commitment and involvement from a significant portion of our amazing employees. The Yelm Public Services will celebrate the retirement of John Edwards after 30 years with the city of Yelm. His last day is this Thursday. There will be a lunch and a little recognition for him tomorrow at Public Works at noon from 12 to 1. Council's obviously invited to attend that if you can make it. In the beginning of March, several positions that were funded in the 2025-26 biennial budget will begin serving the community of Yelm. This includes positions in wastewater, parks, streets, and the newly created position of grant project manager. And of course, public service employees have been busy cleaning up after the storm last night for a good chunk of the day in the debris. In the police world, police in court and the prosecutor's office took part in a joint training. This is the first time that's ever been done. It was so successful and so valuable, they've already scheduled another one. Police department will celebrate the retirement of Officer Jared Garay after 25 years of service with the city of Yelm. That event, coordinated by Jared's family, will take place at the Yelm Community Center next Thursday, March 6th at 3 p.m. And not done yet, just stand by.
A lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on. Parliamentary training reminder for April 8th from 2 to 5 at the community center. If you can let Kathy know if you will be attending, just so we can get a head count for seating arrangements and for fees that we're going to have after that before the council meeting. Activities coming up from our rec and communications coordinator. Water Tower Tots will happen March 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, and 31st at 10 a.m. This is for children 9 months to 4 years. This has been going on since January 1. We're averaging about 10 attendees per event. The evening edition of Community Conversations will take place on March 12th at 6 p.m. The Elected Officials Town Hall will take place on March 20th at 6:30 p.m. And then we'll wrap up March with Family Game Night, March 28th at 6 p.m. And all the community activities will be at the community center. The last thing is the event review committee met today to discuss and evaluate event applications for the Nisqually Barbecue Rally. That'll take place July 25th and 26th. And the annual Jazz in the Park, which is August 1st and 2nd. The group also discussed preliminary planning for Prairie Days events that will take place on June 13th, 14th, and 15th this year. The recommendations from the event committee will come before council in the consent agenda at a meeting in the near future. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Councilor Crossman.
This came up today and I just want to make sure I was correct. The trail from Boys and Girls Club down, who cleans that up? Do we do that for Thurston County or does Thurston County actually come in and clean?
Funny you should ask. We are talking with Thurston County to take over that trail. Currently it is, correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, it is their responsibility, Thurston County's. We are trying to either take it over or lease it or whatever kind of arrangement so we can maintain it as well as have some consistency for the parking lot that we want to provide on that trailhead. Anything else to add on that, Cody?
That's why I said this morning, so I was correct.
We do help them from time when they can't get out here. If there's some major emergency, we'll come out there and clean it.
We are working to take on more of that though. Any other questions for Todd or staff? All right, for my report, we did have a unveiling recently. Thank you, Councilman Kaminsky, for attending. Regarding our mural mosaic. You might have seen it on our community center. It's a gorgeous looking art piece and it's in front of you. You all have it in front of you. It looks gorgeous. Also shout out to Lynn for coordinating all that and making that happen. And shout out to Toby and the folks at Public Services for putting that up the last couple minutes, not just a few minutes, but they spent a significant amount of time to put that up and it wasn't easy. So thank you, Toby, and your crew. Other than that, I've got an EDC meeting tomorrow. I had a meeting with the superintendent along with the police chief and AC assistant chief last week regarding our SRO program, school resource officers. They basically wanted to know their contract is up at the end of this year and basically wanted to know our commitment level. And I'm a very strong supporter. I know council is also strongly supportive of this program. It's very important to have school resource officers and police officers into schools, making not only just for safety, but for those relationships as well with the police. And, you know, I think it shows, and it's sad that there's other folks, other jurisdictions that don't have the commitment that City of Yelm does and the Yelm School District does to ensure that that is can happen. So I just let them know our position on it. We are going to be fully committed to it. We might have to renegotiate the contract. I let them know that we would be supportive if we can help out on the city side, but obviously we need to make sure that our staff is paid for their time and all that. Other than that, any questions for me? All right, starting with council member reports, starting with Councilmember Kaminsky.
I had only my Nisqually River Council meeting and we talked, as I said, about the I-5 bridge and how instead of widening the highway, they're going 85 feet over it, and they showed us a rendering. They said the goal for that to be completed was 2027, 28 at this point. And we had a presentation on the Muck Creek hydrology and geology analysis, which is basically the study of why stream water dries up. And they said our water down in the basin is about 70% less than it was before. And then they did talk briefly about the fear of federal funding freezes and that they estimate at least 10 people from the Mount Rainier National Park might be gone due to that freeze. And I attended the Paul Butler seminar put on by the city. It was great. I've already used some of his verbiage in my real life. And then the tile wall opening was fantastic. That's my report.
Great. We're going to Councilmember Palmer.
No new meetings, got EMS tomorrow, so looking forward to that.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Hess.
Intercity Transit Authority, Director Colt, I believe you've gotten that email from their planning department that they want to talk about the bus routes again and all. So hopefully that meeting will occur. I'm happy to see that we're starting to build that relationship with them as we grow to be able to get that involved a little bit more. And then I wanted to address from our last meeting, our being on the Public Safety Committee. I would like to say that I know our law enforcement as well as the court system works the way it's supposed to, that we don't just, there's not dangerous individuals being put out on the street overnight. When they are arrested. The situation that was brought up and discussed about, some information in reference to that is that was a veteran going through a PTSD situation. It was not as we hear reporting, because we mostly hear from King County and Seattle about how their judges just release people into the street with no willy-nilly on that. So I just wanted to reassure our community that we have a good system, it's working, and we aren't releasing dangerous individuals into the street just because. So just wanted to address that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hess. Councilmember Kingheiser.
Yeah, pretty simple last 2 weeks. I did want to share that I was able to sit in on a Monday Mindset Leadership Development Conference with actually beauty industry Carrie Duffy. One of the big takeaways that I took from this hour-long conference was kind of far-reaching. It was to be clear is to be kind. There is no telepathic thinking. Gradual breakdowns become sudden, huge changes in our culture. And I thought that was really kind of neat to see, not only in my salon pathway, but the pathway through all of the entities that I serve, and even through here. You know, sometimes when we let little things go, all of a sudden it's like, it's not supposed to be like that. And so so be involved and figure out, you know, where your spot is, and also say what you mean, be clear. I thought that was really great and spoke to me. We have been busy on the Dollars for Scholars side of things, planning. Get your tickets for the auction coming up on March 8th. It's gonna be an absolute blast. Our home show through the Yelm Chamber of Commerce is happening April 25th and 26th at the middle school this year, which is a brand new place with a whole new look. We've got 2 car shows coming, so that should be a lot of fun as well. And then community being a special spot in all of our hearts. I attended a business card swap at the Shiplap Coffee House. And so much of our business community was there. It was literally wall-to-wall people. It's not my super favorite place to be, but it was really neat to see so many people, and I stuck it out and actually met quite a few new people. Which was just surprising to have that place packed on a rainy Sunday. So just proud of our community showing up.
Thank you. Councilman Crossman.
So, that's when my hest reminded me that I forgot to mention on inner city transit presentation will be April 1st. Yep, so we will get an April 1st presentation from inner city transit about some of the changes they're making, and the building department wanted to stress in some routes up to Homewood Boulevard. Will be fantastic, which I think we're all in agreement. A lot of people live up there. Now, on Friday, we attended Steady along with the mayor. Presentation from 13 counties trying to get heat pumps out to low income electric heat pumps. So if you need a heat pump, they put on this big campaign. And then attended the business card group on Sunday. Saw a lot of a few familiar faces, but a lot of new faces for businesses and a lot of small ones. So it was great to see that small business primarily concentration and make some connections for some newer ones that have come in town in the area as well. And then it's all important stuff.
All right, thank you. Councilor Richardson.
Well, I attended with these 2, the government committee, and you guys are doing a fine job. We're getting some good deliberations, a wonderful job there. Attended public service meeting. Josh already talked about that. I do want to say too, as City Administrator Stanson was talking about, Yelm being a good place to work, and it's true. And to talk about the police officers in Yelm, we've got some good police officers in Yelm, and the presence that they have in our community, just the presence alone is comforting. And I've seen more of them. I've seen them, they've been very quick to respond. I mean, there's been some things happening in our community that where the sirens are, you're just looking which way they're going. And so keep supporting your police, because they I think they love to serve us, but every now and then, just make sure you let them know again, we support you. And every time I pass one, I always like wave at them, and then I check my rearview mirror. I'm like, hope he doesn't pull around and pull me over. So you just got to keeping that good support for your community, because people will work better and harder and trust each other more if we support each other. And so I just really want to give a shout out to the Yelm police officers, and especially Rob. He's always at the gym working out, and when I do go, I see him. I go sometimes.
One of the most fit,
He's one of the most fit police chiefs, and we should have a competition to see who's the most fit police chief. Rob would win. But not just because, he's physically fit. I think he's mentally sound, and he's a good dude. So I just wanted to throw it out there again, thank you for having a good place for officers who want to work. And I just feel safe in this community, because we really do have a good police chief and officers that just support them, just wave at them. Even the people that are on the street, just strangers, wave at them.
Yeah. I did a ride along on Friday with Officer Armstrong. And one of the things I ask all the officers when I do a ride along, what's the most important for you here in Yelm? And the biggest thing every time they say is the support of the people and the council and self. It's not always like that in other cities and municipalities. So we are unique in that aspect, that we are very, very strongly supportive of police here. All right. Thank you, Councilman Richardson. Is there anything, we still have executive session, none scheduled. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Councilor Richard Crossman.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.
I'm just kidding. Good night.